Hello, I'm Bernie Martin Beck, and today we're going logging. You know, they're called log trucks, just like this, not logging trucks. And you'd see a sign as you drive down the road, log truck. I wanted you to meet the other guy all dressed in uniform for logging. You are?
Jim Ford.
Jim Ford, and you brought this beautiful lady along.
Shirley.
Shirley.
Shirley, we're glad you came, but we want to talk about logging, and that's why I borrowed my logging shirt. And you guys cut big stuff, right? Is this about you?
Yeah, that was one of the first motor scrapers that went into the woods. It was rubber tired, and we used it for rocking the roads, for logging roads. And that was in 1958. And,
well, now, tell me, why do you want to even rock the road?
well, so we could work in the wintertime, you know. And it was part of the Forest Service requirement, and the BLM too. And so then in the late 50s, they started rocking the roads. Before, you had to be someplace where there was natural rock or something like that. You couldn't hardly log in the wintertime, so they started rocking the roads, and then they could log all winter long. So it was a big improvement. You could load yourself and spread it yourself. It cut down on the amount of.
Now, how in the world did you get? Now, this would be where?
Oh, this was over at Gold Beach on Lawson Creek. Lawson Creek empties into Illinois down by Agnes.
I hear you say Illinois, and I know that a lot of people out here do, out in the Illinois Valley.
That's you went through Gold Beach to get there.
You had to go the long way, didn't you?
Yeah.
How did you get there?
We went to Brookings and then go up the coast and to Gold Beach, and then we turned in from Gold Beach and went straight back towards Agnes, but we went up over the hill away from the Rogue River. We was in between the Pistol River and the Rogue River. It was back in that country.
And did you like your work? Did you like doing that work?
Oh yeah.
It's dangerous, isn't it?
Yeah, it was interesting. You got to do everything. You got to, haul logs. You got to drive, run equipment. You got to use explosive, and well, you got to do everything. And everybody did it. All the loggers knew how to do all these things. I mean.
And the little women all stayed at home and did the.
Yeah.
They run the farm. They did several jobs. I used to wallpaper and paint my house at night after I got the children to bed. You organized yourself because you had a lot to do at home.
Well, and some of you gals were working besides, right? This was...
Well, not so much then.
Not after the war.
No, women had worked, but they were home now having a family. And your home was very important in your family. But what we did do a lot of, you did PTA, you volunteered at the school to help with the children, and Boy Scout, that kind of thing. You become very interested in a different area, if you see what I'm saying.
I do, and that's what kept this community, all of Southern Oregon, growing.
Yes.
You had a house to come home to, is that right? And you were in what it's called, an industry that was essential. Logging was essential to the war effort.
Yes.
During the war, yeah. And then afterwards, after the war was over with, it was just everybody started building houses, and there was demand for logs to make lumber, and that was the way it was.
Now, there's a picture here. This tire looks almost as tall as that kid. Who's the kid?
Oh, this one here?
Yeah.
That was old Tom Stoll. He was always young looking. He was probably, Tom's probably 60 years old.
And is it, oh really? And this rig, is that one of the?
A grader, yeah.
Because that's why we can still go into the forest, isn't it? Or I know when they they had a washout on the back road to the coast. And they had to go up to Canyonville and across and around, and there's roads every place, right? Because
the logging, and they built roads in there and everything. It's just like a lot of people don't know that, you know, the Hell's Gate Bridge down there at Gleese, that belongs to the BLM. It don't belong to the county, it don't belong to the state, it belongs to the Bureau of Land Management. And every time we hauled a load of logs across there, we had to pay, I think it was pretty close to $7 every time we hauled a load across that bridge.
oh, like a toll road.
So, it's,
And what's this about?
well, that's a big oil can that they used, mostly used it. Yeah, that's an antique now.
My
They
friend,
use them on the railroad a lot more than they did in the woods.
well, my friend Bill Young, when he was moving from his place into a senior residence, had a sale. He said, Bernie, what are you going to do with that old thing? And I said, probably put it on TV. He was my guest on here a number of times.
Actually, that's worth some money now.
Oh?
You don't find them in good a shape as that.
My oil can, yeah, it's got oil in it besides. So, Jim, this is so interesting because you brought pictures of things I can't even imagine. What in the world are they doing?
This is a picture of my son's truck when they had the silver convoy come into Grants Pass there with the silver fire. We had 1,500 logging trucks come into Grants Pass. And we met out at the fairgrounds, and I just climbed up on the reach so I could see all the trucks and take a picture. But they come from all over the Pacific Northwest, and Bob Slagle and Georgette Brown's husband, Larry Brown, there was a lot of people that was involved in putting it together, and we got all the log trucks to come, and we was protesting the environmentalists, you know, and that was the silver fire that was out towards, you know, Silver Creek and down in there, and
Because you were saying that's burned, let's salvage what we can.
yeah, but the environmentalists were protesting it, so
They wanted the bugs to eat it.
they didn't want to do anything. It's kind of like the biscuit fire; they don't want to do nothing. So it's just one of them things that's not right, but they seem
Oh my goodness. I understand what you're saying. And to me, it's kind of like potatoes and corn and other things that the crop is there, you harvest it, and then we're getting into real serious stuff, because when you retired, you maybe, you kept the plaid shirt, but what did you do with your stuff?
with what?
With your stuff.
All your stuff.
Your
When I quit logging, I was looking at all that stuff, and I thought, now what am I going to do with it? So I just hung it up on the wall to get rid of it.
Yeah, it was your shop, right?
Yeah,
It was a big shop for big trucks.
And with equipment, we bought D8s in there and logging equipment.
No, I think D8 is a cat,
Yeah, D8's a cat, yeah.
and it needed to be repaired.
Yeah, and so you brought it in there and you...
As your wife said, it was out in the country at that time.
Oh, yeah.
You know, when he built that shop, it was so that he didn't have to work out in the woods, and so in the wintertime he brought it in, and they got it in good shape for the next spring, and that was very important part of his world at that time.
Oh, I understand, but now there's not a log truck in there at all, because there's no log trucks anymore.
No,
It's a storage unit, an enormous storage unit.
It's a treasure house. I mean, I just love the fact that the only chair I could see around was this stool with, what about that cushy seat?
Yeah.
Well, Came right off a.
Well, it come off of probably a mower or a hay rake or something. And there's an old tractor seat that.
And there you are, as proud as a kid.
Well, they did a good. It was a good deal. You could pull it up to the table, and you used it for welding and stuff like that.
Yeah, well, there's a lot of things in that museum. Now, this looks like kitchen work.
Oh, that's
that was just a lot of the stuff that we had when we was, camped out. And
This is her beautiful kitchen. And out there are all these you call it camp utensils?
yes, yes.
skillets.
Cast iron. They used cast iron those days. Yes.
Now, did you ever work on a forest fire?
Oh yeah, quite a few of them.
Because you had the equipment
Yeah.
and you knew the roads.
Yeah.
Yeah, nowadays, my goodness.
Worked on quite a few fires.
Name me a couple.
We was on the big fire at, up on Coal Creek out of Powers there. There was about 1,700 men on it. We was on that for 11 days. We was out here on one where the Forest Service lost me. The Forest Service lost me one time. I went to the fire and they thought I bugged out and they sent the state police after me, and actually I was on the fire.
Oh my goodness. Well, we went out to one out of O'Brien. My aunt was a nurse. She spoke Spanish, and they had during the war. And we went up there, and then they said, "Get out of here, the fire's coming this way." And we drove down that mountain road with flames on this side, flames trying to jump over to this side. I was 6, maybe 5 or 7. I thought it was great fun, but I'm sure everybody was terrified. You brought some things here that I'm fascinated. Ford Brothers Logging Company. This is Mike's.
Yeah.
What?
Well, he was still in high school, and he worked part-time. He was learning, and he went on to become a log trucker and had his own trucks and stuff. And
Mike Ford. Yeah, his signature looks a little like a school kid.
yeah.
At what age did? Oh, there it is, log truck.
Well, see, that sign is outdated now. It's got to be orange.
Oh,
You can't use them yellow signs like that anymore.
well, that's history then. What do we got? Here's this Ford Brothers. What is it?
It's a big a storage tank for diesel fuel. It'd hold a truck and trailer load of diesel fuel. That's where we used to buy the diesel fuel. They'd bring it in, like we was at Happy Camp, where they'd bring it up over Page Mountain and drop it off. And by the way, when we was buying diesel like that, diesel was, when we was at Happy Camp, was 16 cents a gallon.
I never even
And you
heard.
got it cheaper because you bought it by the truck and trailer load.
What's the quantity you can?
Oh, that was over 10,000 gallons. And nowadays you couldn't do that because you'd have to put up a dike all the way around it. Them are outlawed now out in the woods. You can't, there's so many new restrictions that...
You're glad you're not logging right now?
I miss it. I miss it.
Oh, you miss it.
Oh, yeah.
You have a picture of a 1 log load. And tell me about 1 log load.
Well, actually, you get right down to it, they weren't very profitable. They were just kind of pride that, you know what I mean? Yeah.
Okay, bragging rights.
Time you wrestled them big ones, it wasn't very... and you always wondered whether it was going to get to the mill because they were hard to haul because they drove real quick. You had to be careful going around the corner.
Okay.
Well, that's a 1 log load like that one there. If it was bigger, you could put it in. Yeah, right, it would roll off. That's why you put the 2 logs down if you can, and then put the big log in the middle to help hold it.
And these chains didn't always hold.
Well,
did
that's just a deal. Actually, it should have 3 wrappers all the way around it.
And
Yeah.
sometimes
Pardon?
Sometimes you lost a load on the
but
mountain road?
Especially when you had what they call these, this truck here is set up like it's for cheese blocks. And now when you got, you could lose a load and the truck would still stay on the road. But now with the stakes, when you lose a load and the truck tips over, it takes truck and trailer and everything turns upside down because of the stakes. But the stakes are safer on the highway.
Oh, but this came loose, huh? This is a trailer and and that was, oh, what is it?
That's the branded hammer, kind
What?
of like a cattle brand. You had to brand the logs on the end.
Okay, now you show me.
Well, you hit the end of it like that, and then on a government sale, well, then they were required to put a dab out of a spray can yellow paint on the end of it. But on the private ground, you didn't have to.
Now, what's the reason you branded your log?
Well, so when you took them to the mill, the scaler, he'd write the brand on the scale ticket.
Now, tell me, describe this brand.
That one there is an F&F, Ford and Ford.
Oh.
And then you had to register that with the state. You just put it on a piece of paper and you could hammer it on a piece of paper and you send it in and then you register it. And one time we had about 11 different brands and each one had to be different. But if you was on a particular sale, whatever, you had to use that brand on that sale.
Now, what's the reason for branding on a log?
Keep people from stealing it. That's the same way with cattle. Well, they had, especially when they did a lot of log rafting and stuff, they had log pirates. They'd come in the middle of the night with boats and steal your logs out of the raft and then resell them. But you never had too much of it I never heard of any of it too much in logging. I really didn't.
Well, now, this would make an imprint.
Oh yeah,
Just
an
on the
imprint
outside,
on
like
the end of the log. Yeah. You imprint. It was an imprint, and they claimed that if you cut the end off about 2 feet, you could still see the brand if you used a special deal.
Because of the
Imprint going into the fibers.
it would change the fiber of the log.
And they could still tell whether it was a log.
Now, this, folks,
Well, the log pirates used to cut the ends of the logs off and rebrand them.
this is heavier than 3 hammers. So I bet you could swing it with power.
Yeah, well.
Now, you had a little saying that you told me about running. You run to the job?
Well, if you was on a high lead show particularly, or even if you was cataloging, there were 2 different types of logging. We called it high lead logging and catalogging. The high lead logger, he very seldom wanted to be around catalogging because it was too noisy. And it was kind of a cataloger, he didn't want to be around high lead because he didn't particularly care for all them lines going over the top of him,
So you'd take from the top of the mountain down here to a loading dock?
Yeah, But usually you tried to yard uphill, but you very seldom did you try to yard downhill unless you was forced to.
Okay, now what was your motator? What drove this line?
There was a lot of different names for yarders,
Like an old diesel truck or what?
Well, it was what they called a lot of places. It depends where you're working. You work over on the coast, they had different names for different things, And over here, we called them a yarder, and it was mounted on a sled, and there was a set of drums, a main drum, a haulback, and a straw line drum. And so you rigged the tree, and we used a heel boom, what they called it. You had another one. So it got pretty complicated. You had a lot of lines running and stuff, and the rigging would go down into the brush on what they called the butt rigging, and the chokers dangled off of it, and they'd be that.
Now, this skill that you're just describing is handy, because I saw a man, Eula's husband, and he's a senior, maybe you're well, maybe your age. I guess if you've been married 61 years, you aren't young chickens, are you? And they were going to get some firewood. And he said, don't cut it down there. We'll just yank it. I don't know what the word he said. And I watched him, and he wasn't a real man, so he's standing up there. He said, no, that tree, and so I put a pulley over on that tree, and now that tree over there, and then he drops down it.
Pulls it up.
Just like as if it was a feather.
That's what you call yarding.
It is.
Yeah.
It's the same word that you're telling. I was so impressed. Of course, I just had to stand there and say, so that's how work is done. Before you had these big cats that could, you didn't have to build a road to those trees then, right?
No, they had all different kinds of logging, and it's just like they got this new TV show out, The Axeman.
Oh.
All the loggers are mad at that show. Well, it's not that way. They're yelling and screaming and running here and running there. You didn't do that in the woods because you'd be wore out, you and all that yelling and screaming, in the first hour. So most all the loggers are mad about it.
Glad to know that, folks. Aren't you glad you tuned in to Better Life TV? Tell me about, you said that there were two, you cut the log and then you ran?
Well, no, like if you was yarding downhill there and the rigging would come down over your head, and then the chokers were coming down and they dropped down on the logs. And you ran in to set them. Just as soon as you got them set the chokers on the logs, then you ran out because the hook tender or the side rod or the rigging slinger, they had different names for different things. You had a hook tender. He bossed the yarder. Then you had a rigging slinger. He bossed the choker setters. And he was the one that yelled at the whistle punk to go ahead on it.
Whistle punk?
Whistle punk. The guy that stood over here, and this guy here, he yelled to him to go ahead on it, and he'd blow the whistle. And then
blow the whistle takes on new meaning because now we think of it as being some political thing, but there it was a safety feature, right?
Oh, yeah.
Maybe that's the similarity.
But logging has changed so much in my time that...
no more whistleblowers.
Well, no, it's all remote control. And,
it's
a lot
signal,
safer.
yeah.
How big is a log?
This one here?
Yeah.
I imagine that one would probably go pretty close to 6,000 board feet. So.
And these things, we're talking post-war primarily here. Build America. After the war, people came home, had their kids, needed to build a bigger house. Logging was what kept our world.
Oh, yeah, when it was really logging here in the state of Oregon, we had plenty of money for our schools and
Jim,
everything.
could I interject something? On that scaling, I don't think she knows that you had scale tickets and you had to pay to the state of Oregon. See, on your PUCs, you were given a permit to log. And those scale tickets that came off with that mark on the log, it was the law, but also a certain amount of that money went to the state of Oregon, and the PUCs used to pay for all the road building in the state of Oregon. That's right.
And all that money's gone.
Yeah, because
Yes.
there's no more logging trucks,
And it was a special account. They didn't take it. They didn't take it for other things. It was for road building and state police.
But the logging roads were built out of not that money, right?
no.
Who built the logging roads?
Oh, okay, the Forest Service sold the timber to the mill. Okay, then the mill paid the Forest Service, and then the Forest Service took that money that they got from that, and they turned around, and that's how you in lieu of paying the money, the mill built the road. So the Forest Service got the road because of the timber. And then you had to build it to the Forest Service specifications or the BLM specifications. And
Now you tell me, why are we wearing these plaid jackets? What's
Well,
the reason?
they were warm and everything, and your clothing changed over the years. You know, they come out with newer stuff, and
This is
it's still good.
this is thick wool, and this is because I've got pictures of you logging out in the snow.
Mm-hmm.
No problem.
No, it depended on where you were again. You know,
10 days on.
pardon?
Did you worked for 10 days or?
Usually, and then he came home for 3 or 4.
It depends where we was working.
Yes, that's true. That's
Like a lot of times we'd leave here in Grants Pass if we was working out in the upper Applegate. We'd leave Grants Pass at 3:30 in the morning because we'd wanted to be at the job when it's daylight. And that's determined wherever you was working was what time you got up. So,
Folks, you've heard it here. This is the way it was.
well, I got grandsons that get up at 1:30 and go in the logging truck and go clear to the coast, and they leave at, 12:30 at night.
I guess that's the way it is now, not just the way it was.
That's right. Yeah. Mhm.
I want to thank you both. Is this rig called?
Well, this is a load machine, and this is what we call the heel boom, and we're loading with tongs. Eventually, we converted this machine over to grapples, where he didn't have to get up on the load. This guy would take, and he had the grapples, and he'd swing over and he'd grapple that log and put it on.
I think that means grab it.
Yeah, yeah.
Did you ever work in a log pond where you had to walk on the logs in the water?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. But I didn't do it very much.
Thank you so much for
Yeah,
being
you
here.
bet.
Thanks for adding those insights we wouldn't have known.
Yeah.
I'm Bernie Martin Beck, and I'm talking log trucks and log roads and sawmills and the way it was. Southern Oregon, Northern California.
Alaska.
Alaska, too. He's done it all. Thanks for tuning in. And here it is, the sign log truck. When I heard people say logging, I said, no, it's log truck. There it is.